Welcome to Saint of the Day. Today, July 27th, the Church celebrates Saint Pantaleon of Nicomedia, affectionately remembered in the East as Panteleimon, the All-Merciful. Born in the final years of the 3rd century in one of the most splendid and formidable cities of the Roman Empire, in what is now Turkey, Pantaleon seemed to have the whole world within reach. Gifted with rare intelligence, he trained in medicine and rose to become the personal physician of Emperor Maximian himself. Though his loving mother had raised him in the Christian faith, the intrigues of power, human glory, and the pagan idols of the imperial court gradually pulled his soul away from God. But an elderly, devout priest named Hermolaus, living in hiding, crossed his path and reminded the young doctor that his scientific knowledge could only treat mortal flesh, while Jesus Christ alone was the true and eternal Lord of health and life. One day, wanting to test the power of the Redeemer's name, Pantaleon came across a child freshly killed by a venomous viper's bite. Invoking the divine name for the first time in real faith, he watched the child rise back to life as the serpent dropped dead before his eyes. Fully converted, the court physician changed course abruptly. He gave away the fortune he had inherited from his father to the poor and began practicing medicine without ever charging a single coin. Facing jealousy and denunciations that reached the imperial throne, the saint refused to deny Christ, healing a paralyzed man as living proof of his faith. Sentenced to death in the year 305, he endured terrifying tortures until he was beheaded, tied to a dry old olive tree. The martyr's blood didn't just make that tree bloom instantly. To this day, his relics in Madrid and Italy still astonish believers, liquefying every year on his feast day. Saint Pantaleon is the protector of physicians and of all who suffer bodily illness. On this same July 27th, the Church also honors Pope Saint Celestine I. Coming from southern Campania, Italy, and a witness to the brutal collapse of the Western Roman Empire, he ascended to the throne of St. Peter on a somber day in September of the year 422. He found a capital devastated by barbarian invaders, yet Celestine led like a lion of orthodoxy, ordering the reconstruction of plundered churches and taking responsibility for the Basilica of Santa Maria in Trastevere. Still, storms far more dangerous than any barbarian army were threatening the faith itself. In the Eastern Empire, the error of Nestorius was spreading, teaching that the Virgin Mary could not rightly bear the title Mother of God. Aware of the abyss such a heresy represented, Pope Celestine convened and backed the Council of Ephesus in 431, where Catholic doctrine forever and dogmatically defined Mary as Theotokos, the living tabernacle of God himself. He was also known for his pastoral kindness toward the dying, and he sent the first missionary seeds of St. Patrick to Ireland, setting in motion the conversion of an entire nation. He died in the year 432, leaving the world a faith that would outlive the ruin of earthly empires. His story is a reminder that even when civilizations crumble, the truth the Church defends does not crumble with them. Centuries earlier, though still remembered on this July 27th, the Church honors Saint Simeon Stylites the Elder. From the remote province of eastern Cilicia, near the end of the 4th century, there emerged a man whose life seems to brush against the very edge of the impossible. Belonging to the rigorous desert fathers of Syria, Simeon was a simple shepherd who, thirsting for the perfection described in the Gospel, embraced monastic life. Driven by an unrelenting hunger for purification and total surrender to the Creator, he subjected his body to some of the harshest penances known in antiquity, isolating himself from the crowds inside a bare, comfortless cave. As his fame spread, pilgrims, kings, and even pagan Arabs traveled tirelessly to reach him, hoping for a miracle. To escape the constant crush of curious visitors, Simeon made the decision that would carve his name into eternity. He stacked stones and raised a pillar, Stylos. Over the following decades, he kept building it higher, until it reached 17 meters into the sky. Up there, almost without moving and eating next to nothing, he interceded before God for an astonishing 40 years. From the top of his column he converted multitudes and pressed even princes toward charity, proving that for someone who surrenders completely to Christ, the weight of the flesh simply stops mattering. Also on this July 27th, the Church remembers Saint Clement of Ohrid, a tireless bishop whose labors earned him the title, equal to the apostles, among the nations of Eastern Europe. In the middle of the 9th century, the Slavic peoples lacked the words of the gospel in their own mother tongue and struggled under foreign pressure to abandon their newfound faith. Clement accompanied the great teachers Cyril and Methodius on their apostolic mission. But after his mentors died, he was imprisoned by rival political schemes and sent into exile, and still, he refused to give up. He found shelter under the protection of the Bulgarian ruler Boris I and led the founding of the school of Ohrid. From his tireless, patient teaching came a written alphabet for the peoples of Macedonia and Bulgaria. Over the years, he personally instructed more than 3,500 students. Clement also gave his church a living liturgy, so that even the simplest believers could pray using the very sounds of their homeland. In 893 he became Bishop of Velica, and he died in 916, having brought entire nations into the knowledge of the Christian faith. His legacy still lives today in every Slavic word ever written in praise of God. Turning to a very different July 27th, centuries later, the Church honors the Martyrs of Cordoba, Aurelius, Natalia, Felix, Liliosa, and the monk George. Under the oppressive Emirate of Cordoba, in the year 852, a cry rose up from among a subjugated people, Christians who refused to hide their loyalty to the cross any longer. For years, under a regime where even making the sign of the cross could land someone in chains, the spouses Aurelius and Natalia, known as Sabagotho, along with their relatives Felix and Liliosa, worshipped Christ quietly in their own homes. But after witnessing the bloody flogging of a devout Christian, they decided that hiding was no longer enough. They placed their young daughters under the protection of others, tore the veils from their faces, and publicly professed their faith in Jesus Christ, stunning their jailers with hymns of love even as their judges read out their sentences. The wandering deacon St. George joined them, equally unwilling to stay silent before the emirate. On July 27th, these heroes lost their lives beneath the sword, beheaded together, and won the eternal crown of martyrdom. Their courage still stands today as a testimony that faith spoken aloud, even at the cost of everything, is never spoken in vain. Skipping ahead many centuries, but still on this July 27th, the Church remembers Blessed Maria Maddalena Martinengo, born on October 5, 1687, under the name Margherita, inside a ducal palace in Lombard Brescia. The secular world promised this young noblewoman every flattery the 18th century could offer, exquisite gowns, a mind admired by the nobility, and no shortage of marriage proposals. But beneath all that splendor lived a quiet, intimate vow to belong only to the Lord, where true joy was found in the simplicity of the manger and the cross of Jesus. Facing her father's fury, she entered the Capuchin Poor Clares. Peace did not come easily, she endured a dark night of the senses, strict formators, and even a confessor who, fearing heresy, destroyed some of her writings. Through that trial, she reached extraordinary mystical heights, recording in her diaries how her own heart felt replaced by the Eucharistic heart of Jesus. She died of tuberculosis at 50 years old, her face radiant, crying out, "I go, Lord, I go." She was beatified in 1900. Her life reminds us that even in a world dazzled by comfort, the soul can still choose the harder, brighter path toward God. Still on this same July 27th, the Church honors Blessed Raymond Palmerio. Born a humble shoemaker in 1139 on the streets of Piacenza, Italy, Raymond's life changed course after a serious illness in his youth. He married and found happiness alongside his wife and children, until an epidemic swept through and took his entire family. Devastated, but sustained by his faith in a suffering Christ, he decided to devote the rest of his life to the poorest streets of Piacenza. He made pilgrimages to Rome and to Santiago de Compostela 11 times, earning the nickname Palmerio, or the Pilgrim. He cleaned out abandoned shelters to take in lepers, orphans, and repentant women, restoring their dignity when no one else would. When wealthy merchants refused to help, this simple, unlettered man carried a large wooden cross through the streets, crying out, "Help us, you Christians with hardened hearts." His persistence moved the whole city, which finally began funding his works of charity. He died in 1200, venerated immediately by the very community he had spent his life serving. His story shows that even someone with no wealth, no education, and no title can still become the conscience of an entire city. Centuries after that, but on this same July 27th, the Church honors Saint Ecclesius, bishop and confessor, from the ruins of the fallen Western Roman Empire in 6th century Ravenna, a time when barbarian kings tried to smother the Christian faith. Facing persecution from the Arian Ostrogoth king Theodoric, who even imprisoned and had popes killed to silence Rome's authority, Ecclesius, ordained bishop in 521, stood firm even when simply professing the creed was treated as a crime. After that oppressive regime finally fell, Saint Ecclesius was able to begin building, with the sponsorship of the wealthy patron Julianus Argentarius, the monumental Basilica of San Vitale, in 526, an octagonal temple of Byzantine mosaics that would become a lasting artistic manifesto of the Catholic faith. In the basilica's famous choir mosaic, Ecclesius himself is immortalized forever, offering a model of the Church to Christ. He died around the year 532, having secured the lasting victory of Catholic orthodoxy in Ravenna. Every visitor who walks beneath those glittering mosaics today is, in a very real way, still standing inside the faith this one bishop refused to abandon. Deep in ancient history, but always remembered on this July 27th, the Church honors the 7 holy sleepers of Ephesus, one of the oldest and most moving legends about the hope of the resurrection. In the year 250, under the persecution of Emperor Decius, 7 young Christians from Ephesus, Maximian, Malchus, Martinian, Dionysius, John, Serapion, and Constantine, refused to sacrifice to pagan idols, gave away their possessions, and took refuge in a cave on Mount Cilicia. When they were discovered, Decius ordered the entrance sealed shut, condemning them to die inside. Trusting in their faith, they simply fell asleep. Almost 2 centuries later, under the Christian Emperor Theodosius II, at a time when the Church was wrestling with doubts about the resurrection of the body, a farmer accidentally opened the sealed cave, and the 7 young men woke up, not having aged a single day. Brought before the bishop and the emperor himself, they told their story as living proof of the resurrection God had promised, and shortly after, they peacefully surrendered their souls. The Church celebrates the witness of this astonishing miracle every year on July 27th, as a quiet but unforgettable sign that God's promises outlast even centuries of silence. And we close out today, July 27th, with Blessed Maria Clemente of Jesus Crucified, born Helena Staszewska, who entered the Ursuline Sisters in 1921. In August of 1939, just before the Nazi invasion, she became Mother Superior of the convent in Rokycany Podhalansky, Poland. Facing German occupation, she transformed the convent into a secret refuge, sheltering the sick, saving refugees from execution, and hiding persecuted children, even under grave personal risk. In January of 1943, the Gestapo stormed the convent and arrested her. She was brutally interrogated and sent to the Auschwitz concentration camp, where she became known only by the number 38,102. Even in the most inhuman conditions imaginable, she never stopped offering spiritual support to her fellow prisoners. She contracted typhus and died on July 27, 1943. She was beatified by Pope John Paul II alongside the 108 Martyrs of Poland. And that brings us to the end of today's journey through the saints of July 27. If these stories moved your heart, subscribe to Saint of the Day, comment asking for one of these saints' intercession for someone you love, and share this video with anyone who needs to hear this message today. The full prayer to each of them is in the description. See you tomorrow.